Hello and welcome to the Regional Admission Counselors of California Virtual College Fair. We are so happy that you're joining us tonight for this panel. It is a great topic. We're going to be learning all about writing your college essay. All right, now I have a few housekeeping announcements before we get started, and I turn it over to our panelists. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. We definitely hope that you'll be paying attention and enjoying this and learning so much, taking notes, but don't be afraid if there's something you want to clarify or something you hear makes you think of something you want to know a little bit more about. Put that question in the Q&A because our panelists are excited to see them. They'll be doing reading some of them and answering Q&A questions aloud at the end of the presentation as well. So get questions in though at any time. Your camera and your microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. That's why you want to use that Q&A button. And this is just one of many different sessions that are happening. We hope that you have signed up for the college fair sessions that begin following this panel so that you can attend and learn about some great schools, not only across California, but across the country and even internationally. This presentation is being recorded and all of the college fair presentations are being recorded as well. You can find all of them at the same website where you register for sessions. strivescan.com/RACC. All right, I'd now like to turn it over to our panel today, and Vanessa will be kicking us off. So thank you, Vanessa, and Cheryl and Leanne for being here.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Vanessa Aya. I use pronouns she, her, and I am with the University of Colorado Springs. In a minute, I will have my other two co-presenters introduce themselves as well. I have been with my university since, oh goodness, about 22 years ago. I started with them as an academic advisor, but it's been for the last 11 years that I have worked for our Office of Admissions. For those of you who are not familiar, RAC, Regional Admission Counselors of California. We are an organization made up of over 100 admissions counselors that represent universities outside of the state of California. What we share in common is that we all are regionally based somewhere in the state of California. And so we look forward to working with students and families like yourself who are in the college search process and open to a variety of out-of-state options. And so before we get started with our topic, creating the college essay, I will first have Cheryl introduce herself and then Yen.
Thanks, Vanessa. Hi, everyone. My name is Cheryl Tevlin. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an associate director of undergraduate admissions at Drexel University, which is located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I have been in admissions at Drexel for a little over a decade. I worked on campus for 7 years before moving out to California to work with students on the West Coast in 2017. So I work with students primarily in Northern California and Nevada, and then homeschooled students all across the country. And I am based in the Sacramento area. And now I'll turn it over to Nien.
Thanks, Cheryl. Hi, everyone. This is Nien Quach, and I am your admission counselor from the University of New Hampshire, which is a public flagship institution located in Durham, New Hampshire, about an hour north of Boston and a short 20-minute from the Atlantic Ocean. I'm also based on the West Coast, so same time zone as you. Certainly, if you have any question about UNH or anything else regarding college admission, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you for being here.
All right, so let's jump into it. The college essay. I recognize, I of course have my lens of working in admissions for the last 11 years, but this past year has been interesting, not just because we've also been working with students in a pandemic, but because I'm also a parent. My oldest son is a high school senior and has really offered me a firsthand view of what y'all are going through. So I know, students, that the college essay is somewhat daunting, but the goal is by the end of this presentation, you will feel empowered and ready to start writing your story. And so the essay is a genuine way to share your story. It provides us admissions counselors context of who you are outside of your transcripts, outside of your test scores, and also outside of perhaps your letters of recommendation submitted by your teachers and your counselors. please remember you are in control of your essay. It gives us a glimpse of your character, the type of writer you are, and what you might contribute to our campuses. We will see a wide variety of essays. So again, don't find it daunting, because we won't just see potentially one and only essay. We will see a variety of writing pieces from you. It might come in the form of short essays, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The personal statement is what we commonly refer to as the college essay. If you're going to be submitting it via the Common Application, over 900 colleges and universities use the Common Application, so it's very common. There might be schools that, in addition to that college essay, you might have supplemental questions that you'll need to answer for college and university. There might be an additional information prompt. And this past year, the Common Application, for example, had a COVID prompt and how that might have affected your academics and your goals. And then, of course, if by chance you are submitting an artistic portfolio, you don't get away with just submitting a portfolio. Many of them will require or ask that you also offer an artistic statement. So that's going to be writing for you. And then finally, remember that we are interacting with you in a variety of different ways, via snail mail, via emails, and via text messages. So while we don't necessarily take that into consideration, some of us colleges and universities don't consider that as a part of the application process. I would encourage you to still be professional and personable in these various different writings. And then as far as the essay, again, it is, I think, one of the hardest things for students to recognize is that you do need to take time to self-reflect. You want to think back about those experiences that you've had in your high school years and putting it in words. And again, I recognize how busy you all are, but if you are able to pull out highlights for you to share via your application for admission, one of the goals is we want to know about you. We want to find that connection as, readers of your application. Context is very important, and that, again, as we examine you and your transcripts and whatnot, the essay is that opportunity to provide content. And I would encourage you that this is the time to brag. Some students don't find that they can do that naturally, but this is where you do want to show off your hard work. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl, and she will be talking about the various different essay questions and prompts.
That's right. Thanks, Vanessa. So let's hop into some of the more practical aspects of the essay. So what could you actually be writing about? Many of you may end up applying to a school that uses the Common Application. There are hundreds of schools that use the Common App, and it's helpful in that you're able to submit, some all of your biographical information, the high school you attend, information about your family at one time, and then you only have to fill it out once if you're sending to a bunch of different Common App schools. And then you may have some supplemental questions and supplemental essays, but the Common App has a main essay that you'll need to submit that has a maximum number of 650 words. So, figure a 3 to 4 paragraph essay. We're not talking about a lot of content. So you have to be pretty strategic about how you answer the essay question. I see students who have trouble on both sides. Some students write maybe a little bit too short of an essay. Some students, they have trouble fitting it all. Just remember, we do want you to be somewhere between that 500 to 650 number, so that we really can learn more about who you are. So the prompts that the Common App has, these are listed on your screen in a bit of a shortened format. I will have a link that I'll drop in the chat in just a few minutes that takes you to a website where you can see the full prompt written out. The thing that I really want to highlight here is that you have control over what you're writing about. You can take time, and I strongly suggest you do this over the summer, especially if you're a junior. Take time, look at 3 or 4 of the essay prompts and start outlining them. Say, okay, when's the time I've questioned a belief? Let me go through and outline how I might be able to answer that. What about a period of personal growth? Something that is a story that makes you who you are. Start outlining it. The one that you're able to outline the most easily is going to be the one that's the easiest to write. And I talk about an outline because I want to make sure that you are focusing on the fact that an essay should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It should be like a story. Make sure that you are, really grabbing us with a strong narrative. And that is something that's important. Don't make it just a list of things that have happened. They should all connect. I see sometimes students will start talking about one thing and then suddenly change direction and then make their way back. And it looks to me like there's just something they really wanted to tell us that they couldn't find anywhere else to say it. And so they drop it in their essay. I don't suggest doing that. I'll talk in a minute about where you can put pieces of information that don't fit well in places like the essay. Make sure that your essay makes sense, goes from point A to B in a clear line. You don't want it to be scattered. You want it to have clear direction. If you start writing your essay and you get to the end and you look back and you say, wow, my essay doesn't actually answer the prompt. I have a quick hint for you with the Common App essay. You can change the prompt to prompt number 7. That's a topic of your choice. So that's just write about whatever you'd like in that case, but just make sure you're answering the prompt. And if not, change it to 7, and that's completely fine. Now we're going to move on and talk a little bit about the UC personal insight questions. So just a quick note, none of us work for UCs. I don't believe any of us ever had, so we're not going to be the experts in this. You can absolutely contact the admissions office for the UC you're interested in, talk to your college counselor, but there are a few notes that we wanted to make about the essay process for the UCs. These are shorter. These are 350 words. So it is a much different feel. You need to get a little bit more straight to the point than you need to with the common application essays. You don't have as much time to develop your thoughts. So you want to make sure that you're being clear and concise. You're going to have 8 questions you can choose from, and you have to choose 4. You get to choose the questions you want to answer. The UCs don't have a preference. Make sure you're answering ones that you really feel a connection to, ones that help to tell us more of who you are, because that's the point behind the essay. We want to get to know you. We want to really feel a connection and to see, okay, how might you fit into our university? Most schools, not all, but most schools that are using an essay do something called holistic review. So we're looking at you as a whole person to see how are you a good fit for our university? How are we a good fit for you? So the essay gives us a little bit more insight to who you are, and we can see more of that fit. Vanessa, thank you so much for dropping the Common App essay links in there. I'm going to drop in the UC link now where you can see all of the PIQs as they're shortened to personal insight question PIQs, and can see which ones you think might be a good fit for you. So let's go ahead and move on now and talk a little bit about the supplemental questions that you could be writing. So supplemental questions are ones that are specific to a university. So this is, if you're filling out the common application, it's not going to go to all of the schools that you're applying to. This will go to just one school. There are many different types of supplemental questions. We'll get into that in a moment, but I do want to touch on why the supplemental questions are so important and what you need to really focus on for them. The idea behind the supplemental question is to dig a little bit deeper, to get to know you better, and then in many cases, to get to understand why you might be interested in our university. So I work for Drexel, as I mentioned. The majority of our programs just have the main common application or coalition application essay. We use both applications, but our College of Media Arts and Design does have a supplemental essay, and that asks students to talk about why are they interested in their major? Why do they want to do it at Drexel? And then it gives them an opportunity to highlight any experience that they've had within that field. We don't expect them to have had in-depth experiences, but if you've done a summer program or an internship related to that field, we want to give you that space to highlight it. But the issue that I tend to see in those essays is that students often either skip the question that asks, why are you interested in doing it at Drexel? Which is really problematic because we want to know the answer to that. The programs in our College of Media Arts and Design, many of them are incredibly competitive. So we want to know that if we're admitting a student, that they like our program and are likely to say yes if we're extending them an offer. Or I will see students answer the question, but in a very surface level way. It's something that they found with just a cursory glance at the website. For these supplemental questions, you want to take time. Do not save them until the end. Do some research. Take a look at the program that you're interested in at your school and say, okay, why do I want to do this? What are the opportunities I want to take advantage of? What are the classes that are offered that I'm really excited about? Is there a professor doing research that I want to jump in on? It all depends on what the question is, but if they're asking, why do you want to go to our university? Make sure you're answering that in a really in-depth way, because that often really does matter. Again, schools want to make sure that they are extending an offer of admission to someone who really understands them and is excited to potentially attend there. Now let's jump into some of the examples, the types of supplemental questions that there are. This is just a very small list. Top one is the one I was just discussing. Why do you want to attend our school? Some of them, though, are very creative. My favorite on this list is, if you could choose to be raised by robots, dinosaurs, or aliens, who would you pick and why? I think robots for me. I'm not sure that I feel so great with being raised by dinosaurs, but think through, why would you answer that way? The idea is to see your personality. If you're quirky, that's great. Play into that. If you're a really strong writer, play into that, right? Don't be afraid to show who you are. That's the whole point of this, is so that we get to know you better. One quick note about the essay. If you are a very strong writer and you want to do something a little bit different, for instance, last year I had a student who wrote an entire essay in iambic pentameter. So that was fantastic. They did an excellent job. If you are not the strongest writer, that's not something that you really enjoy, don't worry about doing something crazy and different. Just worry about answering the question and giving us a taste of your personality. But don't be afraid to take risks and to be yourself in these prompts, because again, the whole idea is to get to know you better. Humor, always appreciated, but you don't have to be funny. It really comes down to, who are you? Answer it in a very honest way. My colleague says this, and I love it. If you were to drop your essay outside of a classroom at your high school, and someone picked it up, would they know, based off of just the tone of the essay, if your name wasn't on it, just from the tone, that it was something that you had written? It should be true to you. And then finally, for me, before I turn it over to Nyan, I want to talk a little bit about the other writing that you could be submitting. Vanessa touched on this a little bit, but I want to go a little bit more in depth. So Vanessa, if we can move on to the next slide. We'll talk through what some of those things could be. So I mentioned a minute ago, I was going to talk about a place where you could put in some information that really doesn't fit in well anywhere else. That would be the additional information section. So the Common Application and the Coalition application have them. Many other applications do. If there's no additional information section, feel free to email your admissions counselor with anything that you want them to know. That could be important context. Say you really struggled in school one year and you want to explain that there were extenuating circumstances. That's a great thing to put in the additional information section. Maybe you have a pastime or an interest that is really important to you, but you didn't want to spend the time in the essay talking about it. You had something else you wanted to discuss instead. Put that in the additional information section. Maybe you have had a situation at your school that you want to explain. You had a really tough teacher one year and pretty much no one got above a C. Feel free to put that in that section. Or perhaps you have a learning difference and you were diagnosed partway through high school. And so there was a real change in your grades after you had the accommodations that you need. And you want to tell us about that. Feel free to put that in your additional information section. You don't have to write about any of those things in your essay unless you want to. Remember, your essay is up to you. Write about what you want to tell us. It's great to get input from other people, but at the end of the day, you need to be proud of what you're writing about. And if there's something else you want to say, the additional information section can be a good place to put it. The artistic portfolio that you'll be submitting, normally there are descriptions you have to write. Make sure you're taking time on that. Spell check everything. Emails and texts, like Vanessa said earlier, you want to make sure you're being professional in those things. Spell check. Make sure that you are, being, again, professional and not necessarily terribly formal, but you do want to make sure maybe you're not using a ton of abbreviations or text speak. I'll be honest, I have to look up abbreviations and texts all of the time because I'm just not up on what's going on. So just make sure that your admissions rep is going to understand what you're saying there. And then finally, any letters or notes you're sending to the office, these are things that could potentially end up being attached to your application and considered by the admissions committee in review. So you just want to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward in all of those things. So now we're going to move on to common topics, tips and tricks, and I'm going to pass it over to Nian.
Thanks, Cheryl. Hi again, everybody. And this is Nian from the University of New Hampshire. So every year I read over 1,500 application between, mid-November to mid-March. And the truth of the matter is that there are some topics that students just gravitate toward, okay? So the most popular one includes sport, injury, health condition, community service overseas, or a childhood story, usually involving a family member. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with writing about any of these topics. If it's important to you, write about it, right? So what you should know, however, is that many other students also write about these topics. So make sure that whatever you write is unique to you. Make sure that the essay that you're submitting show us something about you, who you are as a human being, and how you are a good fit for X university, right? Again, these essays are really personal statements, so make sure that they are personal. Next slide, please. So student and parents sometimes, would ask me about like the no-nos of college essays, right? And one of the biggest missteps, I think, is making the assumption in your essay that whoever reads this will share the same opinion and experiences with you. Now, you don't know who will be reading your essay, so make sure that you give the reader the appropriate amount of details and context. For example, if you're going to write about your experience of, growing up in rural California, make sure that your reader who grew up in, say, in a metropolitan New York City, right, can still imagine what that is like and get a sense of who you are through your essay. On the same note, since you don't know who you will read your essays, have someone who has not seen your writing review it, okay? Now, of course, this should be someone that you trust. They might be able to give you a new perspective and also catch things about your writing that you might miss. Again, I want to kind of re-emphasize that concept, like asking someone that you trust. And also recommend having maybe like 2 or 3 people look at your essay. And I certainly don't recommend asking too many folks to read and edit your essays, because that can also cause, your essay to kind of lose its voice and therefore, losing the essence of who you are through it. Another no-no for you, not removing or updating school name when the essay is sent to multiple institutions. Unfortunately, I've seen it every single year when I review application. I'm sure my colleague Vanessa and Cheryl will say the same. So when you are writing that general essay or the main essay for the Common App or the Coalition app, maybe it's best to just not include a school name in there. And if you did, no, it probably won't lead us to deny you based on that alone. It's a little tacky, so why do it, right? And then last but not least, grammar and content. And guess what? Spell check is super helpful, but keep in mind that on its own, it will not save you. There are so many mistakes that will be overlooked by spell check, and here are some examples for you. Next slide, please. Okay, so you can see everything is actually spelled correctly here, but content and of course word usage are off, and that will be, it will show up in essay. So make sure that you look over and have someone else help you look over as well. Next slide, please. All right. So now that we talk about kind of the what could go wrong, let's talk about what could go right, what you should do when writing your essays, right? So first off, get us hooked, right? Paint us a picture of who you are and your passion with your word. We all read a lot of essays as mission counselor. So by having an engaging introduction, you make us want to read your essay. And when you tell a story, say about sport, for example, make sure the essay again is about you and not, football, soccer, or tennis. Fine, give us some detail about the sport if you want to, some context, but then talk about you. We want to know about you, who you are, again, how you can be a good fit for our institution and vice versa. So if you're going to share a story about, say your sibling or, a trip to Costa Rica, great. Just make sure that you talk about you. Again, as Cheryl mentioned earlier, the main essay requirement through the Common App allows 650 words. I believe that is either will cut it off or it won't let you submit it if you go over that word limit. So please be conscious of the word count. And so with that, going to the next slide, we'll show you some example of some essay writing here. So here are two examples of kind of meh writing versus good essay writing. And we like to think of this as kind of the show, don't tell approach, right? You can see from both of the show example that these students are passionate. And especially with the first show example, you can see like, so it's really talking details about what they've done and that, how excited they are about this and their hard work and their curiosity. What I really love about the example is that you can actually, envision the student work ethics and his curiosity. So that is the goal of your essay. So mission accomplished, and that's what you want to do. All right. So with that, I will go on to the next slide and end the presentation with, if you can go to the next slide for me, Vanessa. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So you can go back to the previous one. Okay, so I would like to end this presentation with some food for thoughts, right? So here's the thing. Your essay is the one piece of your application, and the goal is to tell a cohesive and hopefully powerful story of who you are, right? You have complete control over your essay, and this is really your chance to share your voice. The essays also will give us, the people who read it, a chance to learn about you beyond the transcript, the test score, all the supplemental information, and how you would be a good fit for our school, and again, vice versa, right? So, in the end, the college essay is all about you, and I hope that's one thing that you really kind of walk away from this presentation. So whatever it is, or it will be about, I certainly hope that you enjoy the process of writing it, or I hope that you at least try. Thank you. And here's our contact information. If you have any questions, we certainly would love to hear from you. So don't hesitate to reach out.
All right, excellent. So I see that we've got a couple of people who have started to drop in questions via the Q&A button. And let's look through them really quick. Oh, this is a good question. I'll shoot this one to Cheryl. During essay writing, should you just add the show part and not the tell?
That's a good question. I think it depends on what it is. Sometimes it's okay to start with the tell if it's something that we're not going to understand what you're getting at from the show piece. We probably will, but it is okay to put a little bit of the tell in your introduction because your introduction should be sort of a type of summary of what you're going to be demonstrating to us. So it's okay to do it in a small piece and then move directly into the show, but you don't want to spend too much time on it.
Excellent. Oh, I like this question. How many essays do I have to write? How many colleges have their own specific essay prompt? So you should know that, again, as we mentioned, the Common Application, over 900 colleges and universities are on that. And so if you are applying to schools on the Common App, at least one. know though that there are some schools that have their own applications online on their websites, that perhaps it's an optional piece. But I would safely say again, and this is from the lens of my student who applied to both California schools as well as out-of-state schools, even those schools that maybe for admission did not require an essay, he still had to write for scholarships. And so you can't quite, you might have the goal of trying to stay away from schools that have essay requirements, but it catches up to you at some point. So be prepared for that. Nyan, do you see any questions that you want to grab?
Yeah, sure. Let me take a look. Okay, so I have a question about, kind of how long, how many months, week in advance do you recommend starting the essay writing process? And, honestly, if I have any junior in the room, guess what? This summer, I know you have a long year with a lot of Zooming, but this summer will be a perfect time to really start thinking about that college essay and check with your guidance counselor. They might be having some workshop where you can connect with an admission counselor. I know RAC is hosting some event through high school throughout California, where an admission counselor will sit with you and give you some feedback on your essay. So great time to start thinking. And then if you are, a freshman or a sophomore in high school, I think this is where we go back to, what Vanessa and Cheryl were talking about earlier, kind of reflecting on, your experience, who you are, what you're passionate about. Start thinking about it. It's never too early. It's always too late, but it's never too early. So that would be my advice.
Cheryl, which one do you want to grab off this list here?
Sure. So there have been a couple of people who have asked about favorite topic, things that have stood out. So I'll go ahead and answer those. And I'm going to combine that in with someone who asked, do you ever get tired of reading tons of essays every year? I think that it can all go together. Personally, I have a degree in English. For me, the essays are my favorite part because it's like I get to read little stories. I think it's probably going to be a little bit different for every person, but I think what I've seen the most from working with tons of counselors from universities all across the world is that we all really enjoy the essays because it gives us a chance to get to know you better. It really brings some personality, it brings dimension to the process. That's your chance to jump off the page. Some of the topics that have really touched me have been things that are very personal, right? And that can be in a situation where maybe a student went through something difficult and you could see how their family really help support them. Or really one of my favorite essays that I've read was a little bit unusual. It was a student talking about the chores that people in their family ended up being assigned. And she was given the chore that no one else wanted to do, and that was cleaning the cat litter box. So this sounds a little unusual, right? But what she said was she actually ended up with the best chore because it takes 2 seconds, and her siblings had to vacuum the house or take forever, washing dishes, and she was done. But she injected so much humor into it, and I saw so much of her personality and family dynamics. That was one of my favorite essays. But the point is just for us to get to know you better. So, be yourself. I will say that for my own essay, I wish I could go back and rewrite it. I would talk about the fact that I was a high school kid who loved reading Charles Dickens novels, like, close to 1,000-page books, and how I got so excited and knew so much about him and wanted to be the world's foremost expert on Charles Dickens. As an admissions reader now, I see that that would have caught my attention so much more than what I actually did write about, which was a little bit more boring. So don't be afraid, be yourself. That's going to be what helps it really pop. Vanessa and Nyan, any questions you see you want to jump?
Yeah, I'll grab the one that's asking, when do we have to have our essays finished by? And students, for those of you who are juniors, I would actually start, if you don't journal now, if, feel like that is a lost art. If you don't keep a daily journal, you might want to start now. It's a good way to kind of, I know y'all do a lot of, school writing and whatnot, but again, self-reflection. If you don't journal now, you might want to start. I would say, you know, the Common Application opens up August 1 of your senior year. And it doesn't hurt for you to look at those Common Application essay prompts and start to just jot down ideas. It doesn't have to be perfect right now. But I also know, again, just having watched my son this past year as a high school senior, y'all are very busy, whether that's with a part-time job, maybe you're taking AP classes, maybe you just want to have a life and, you know, be with your friends. But honestly, he was able to get his essays done for the Common App within that first week of August. And I got to tell you, as things started to progress through his senior year, it was a good thing for him to have done them early on. Because again, there's other stuff you have you've got going on. So that would be my piece of advice.
All right. So I'm gonna take I'm gonna actually take these back-to-back questions. So with the recent change, you know, in kind of test optional and test blind that many colleges are going with, how much does an essay weight for admission? So let's say, you know, I think a lot of school, even prior to COVID, has always used the holistic review approach to the admission. So they look at everything, right? So your transcript, typically your transcript will hold a lot of weight when it's come to admission decision, but we'll also look at your essays, your you know, extracurricular, your letter of recommendation, and whatnot. So I would say, you know, again, this essay is part of the whole application, and it's supposed to, you know, give us a complete picture of who you are. So definitely, you know, spend some time on it, and then kind of put your best foot forward and really, again, make sure that we get a sense of who you are through it. And then kind of right beneath that, is a question on if we should avoid a common topic that you mentioned in the slide. Again, you know, those are common topic. That just means that a lot of students choose to write about it. You don't have to avoid it. That's something that you're passionate about, that's important to you. Again, this is your personal statement. Make it personal, make it about you. So if you love sport, write about it. Just making sure that it's not about the sport, it's about you who play the sport, and you know what you can tell us about who you are as perhaps a sport player, how you would be a good fit for you know, an X university or college. Okay.
Cheryl, which one do you want to grab?
So I see a question that I'm just going to answer very quickly, and that's when do essay questions come out for the Common Application and the UC applications for students entering for fall 2022? They're actually all live now. So if you're entering in fall 2022, you'll be applying this year, and the links that Vanessa and I dropped in the chat earlier actually will show you the current prompts. And then I'll go through and find another one that we can answer. So there's a question that came through: what topics are considered boring? I wouldn't say that there's any topic in and of itself that's boring. It comes down to how it's written, honestly. So you want to make sure, again, like we talked about before, that you're injecting your personality and your passions into it. And as long as you are, you know, excited about the topic, and that doesn't have to mean that it's something that brings you joy or happiness. It could be talking about an experience that was very difficult, but as long as that emotion is coming through, it's not going to be a boring essay. So again, no boring topics, just comes down to how you're writing it. And I'm sure you will do a fantastic job and write an amazing essay.
All right, we might have time for maybe 2, maybe 3 more questions, but I want to grab this one. It's asking, is it a good idea to write in a storytelling way, like with characters talking? You know, students, I think what also might help you kind of jog your self-reflection is think about, you know, when you come home from school or from work or from a game, and, you know, mom or dad, they ask, how was your day? You know, and then you're like, let me tell you what happened. I saw this one customer, you know, at my job, and they talked about this, and I learned, you know, this particular thing, and, you know, so on and so forth. So I want you to reflect about those times where you were like, Oh man, that was such an interesting experience and how that affected you. And it doesn't have to be just academically. Again, we want to see your character. And, I love reading stories that talk about those various interactions because, again, it's giving me another lens to you outside of your transcripts and test scores. So yeah, I think you can be creative. What would you say our English major, Cheryl?
Yes, so that's a really good question. I would say it is more beneficial for you to talk about yourself than it is to have characters because yes, your writing ability is something that can shine through there. I actually had a student do this recently, and it was really interesting to see their writing ability, but in the end, I didn't learn anything about them. And since that's really the point of the essay, I would say if you want to submit a writing sample, if you're applying to, say, a creative writing program or something like that, and that's something that the university will accept, feel free. But for your personal essay, write more about yourself. I actually saw a question that I think is important that a lot of people have, so I want to answer that quickly. And that is there an essay question about the coronavirus? So the Common Application and the Coalition application both have a separate question asking about community impact, so how you were impacted by COVID. And so that's a really good place to talk about, how maybe you didn't get to experience things you thought you were going to, whether that was a summer program, a research opportunity, the fact that school was maybe harder virtually, or you didn't have reliable access to internet, something along those lines. That's the great place to talk about COVID. I would not use it as your essay topic unless you had sort of extraordinary circumstances surrounding COVID. And just because we're all going through this together, but I realize we're all in the same storm, we're not in the same boat. So if your experiences with COVID were pretty common, just that, we were home, things were different in terms of school and work, feel free to talk about that in the community impact section. If you had really, extraordinary circumstances related to COVID, whether a family member got sick or, something along those lines, and you want to talk about it in your essay, then that would make sense. Just again, be careful there and feel free to use the community impact section.
All right, Yan, you want to take the last question?
Yeah, just trying to answer some in the in the chat box as well. So let's see. I'm just trying to think. I saw a question earlier on RAC, but you must have answered it. So don't worry, just checking in. Yeah, so a student that's how does, can you demonstrate your personality in your essay without coming across too casual and not professional enough? I think, again, this is kind of going back to, making sure that, your grammars and content are, on point. And yes, I would say, at the end of the day, like the essay is for us to get to know you, but also we want to make sure that you have the writing skill needed for, for the college level. So, make sure that you have your essays read by maybe an English teacher or your guidance counselor, again, folks that you trust and can give you good feedback and familiar with, the process and what school are looking for. So.
All right, we will turn it back over to Jennifer from StriveScan. Thank you all for your wonderful questions today.
Thank you so much to Vanessa, Yan, and Cheryl for all of your tips and information. I definitely wish I had a session like this back when I was in high school too. I can't remember, it might have been Cheryl, maybe he said, knowing what you know now, you would have written different essays. I think I would too. I'm the same boat. So I'm so happy for all of our students and families and counselors to watch this today. So since we have, right before we wrap up, I just want to know, from each of you, would you like to share just any last tips, just more in general about the college admission search, or any words of wisdom as these attendees are hopefully heading off from here to attend the college fair sessions and learn about some great schools across the country and internationally, and you are the pros. So I'd love for you to each share one tip.
Yeah, I'll start us off. Right now, students, you and your friends are probably seeing TikToks that are, saying, here's my statistics, here's where I got into it or not, and I want you to tune out that noise. It does not do you any justice. You will spend a lot of time on your applications than for you to waste your time on that. We want to read your stories. So please tune out the social media noise.
Yeah, for me, it's just to really use your resources. Know that your admissions reps are resources for you. We all do this because we love working with students. So reach out to us. Your college counselor at your high school is a great resource. Don't be afraid to really ask questions when you have them. And also, if you have a particular school that you're interested in, and you think you might want to add other schools to your list that are similar, I strongly suggest reaching out to your college counselor and saying, hey, I'm really interested in X school. Do you know any other schools that are similar? So that you can continue to branch out and expand your list. You don't want it to be too big. You want to make sure you have a well-balanced list though. And then Nian, how about you?
Yeah, I think my advice can be, I hope you really take the time and enjoy the journey. Within, senior year, college admission process can really take a big chunk and can be quite stressful. So whatever you do, take time to, take care of yourself and enjoy your senior year, because, you've been through a lot, and, there should be some joy in the journey.
I love all of these tips. I think that they are awesome in helping people approach and come in with the right mindset. I always say that too, it's a journey. Yes, it can feel overwhelming sometimes, but it's also fun and an adventure to think about what's next. And I just want to echo, now you can see these are real admissions counselors. They're real people, they're approachable, they want to answer your questions. Sometimes it can feel like they're far away and scary reading essays and applications and making decisions, but they really are here to help guide you. My last advice is for heading out for everyone heading to the fair. Just remember, these are only 6-minute presentations. They are a small peek at any school that you visit. Even just getting a little info tonight, and maybe you're thinking, oh, I want to check out the schools that these amazing representatives, work for. And, just remember, there's so much more to learn, that it's going to take more than 6 minutes and a virtual video tour, but use these resources and open your mind to some different opportunities in what might catch your eye and catch your attention. All right, so when you close your box tonight, you're going to be linked to a very quick 4-question survey. Students, I'm serious, it's 4 questions, it's super fast. We'd appreciate any feedback that you can provide. Just a reminder that there are the college fair sessions that are happening. We hope that you are already signed up, but if you aren't, there is still time to join in tonight. So you can do that at the website you're seeing on the screen right now, strivescan.com/RACC. And again, this session's being recorded, so you can watch it again, pick up all these tips and tools, share it with friends as well, so that more students can get this great information. And they will be posted in about a week's time, alongside all of the college fair sessions as well, at the same website where you registered. So thanks again, everyone, and best wishes on your college search and decision journey. Thanks for taking the time to be here today. Bye, everyone.